Welcome to this podcast. I'm Lenora, your host for 3 Ps in a Pod. It's about purpose, pathways, and perspectives. And guess what this episode is? The week of November 11th. Happy Veterans Day. Veterans Day honors all those who have served our country in war or peace and largely intended to thank living veterans for their sacrifices. These men and women deserve our gratitude for their willingness to serve this country and help protect our rights and our freedoms. You can always thank their spouses too. I'm very pleased to honor and interview one of our veterans today named Ted Lucas. And I'm going to say one other thing before I introduce Ted and what we're talking about today. But I also want to make sure and mention, as I actually do later in the podcast, but I can do this since I'm host of the podcast. I want to thank my own father for being a veteran and his service in the Korean War. He was an F-86 crew chief in the 335th Squadron, 5th Air Force in the Korean War. And he's going to be 90 years old this next February. And at the very end of this podcast, I have him reading something he wrote back in, I believe it was 1952. And it's very special to me, so I hope you enjoy it. That'll be at the very end of the podcast. But Ted Lucas. Ted is a colleague and friend of mine. Now, I asked Ted to share about his career, but I want to start off by saying he completed a successful career in the Navy where he served for over 30 years on active duty as an explosive ordnance disposal officer. And he has traveled the globe and had a number of command and high-level staff positions, including working in the Office of the Secretary of Defense at the Pentagon. We say more in the interview, so I don't need to say a lot. But this podcast covers the meaning of Veterans Day and how to express appreciation, a list of organizations that Ted shares that you can get involved with that support our veterans. We also share some really nice tips and resources that can support successful transition out of the military. And finally, a very nice list on why veterans are such a great fit for business. It's the best list I've ever heard. So enjoy today's podcast and remember to thank a veteran. I have as guest today on the podcast, Ted Lucas. Ted had a 30-plus year career in the Navy and is now a veteran and has become a friend of mine, and I respect you so highly, Ted. You have taught me quite a few things, whether you know it or not, and you've certainly helped me understand our veteran community, even though my father's a veteran. I've shared this a few times. My father's a veteran, very proud of him and his service, but he didn't talk a whole lot about it. So I've learned so much from you. It is a pleasure to have you on this podcast for this week of Veterans Day. So thank you for joining. And who is Ted Lucas?
Well, first of all, Lenora, thank you very much for allowing me some time on your podcast, 3 Ps. I appreciate that. And the number one thing I have to say is please extend my thanks to your dad for his service to the nation.
Thank you very much.
Number 2, thanks to all our men and women who are currently serving, and thanks to all the veterans and their family who have served our nation. So a little bit about Ted Lucas. Ted Lucas, man, where do I start? I was born and raised in New England. Never lived in the same house for most of my life, and then went to Texas A&M University, Gig-'em Aggies. The only thing I knew about Texas when I moved there to go to school was what I saw in the movie The Urban Cowboy. So I was a Yankee in Texas. Joined the Corps of Cadets at Texas A&M University. Spent 4 years there. And then right out of college, I got my commission in the United States Navy. And on December 7th, 1984, so Pearl Harbor Day, what a day to join the Navy.
Wow.
And went to my first duty station in Newport, Rhode Island, where I went to Surface Warfare Officer School, where I learned how to drive ships. And then from there, I went to Navy Dive School in Panama City, Florida, where I learned to dive scuba, surface supply diving, mixed gas. And then when I went off to my first duty station in San Diego, which was a ship, I met that ship out on deployment in the Philippines. I think my first deployment was 11 months. Turned around and went on another deployment right after that. Did a lot of great work as a Navy diver and decided I would volunteer to join the Navy's program called Explosive Ordnance Disposal, better known as the Navy's Bomb Squad.
Wow.
Each service has a military explosive ordnance disposal specialty. They all do a lot of the same stuff, but the Navy has a mission. Anything below the high water mark is a Navy responsibility.
Wow. Now, what drew you to want to go into the diving and then into the bomb squad? I mean, those are pretty intense things.
Well, first of all, I've always loved being around the water, and grew up on small boats, like to fish. So what better place than to be out to sea on a ship in the water, getting to see all the great places that the world has it all over the world.
Wow.
You asked me why I chose it. I think I chose it just for the excitement. And I think it was just really the excitement in getting to do something that was a little bit more, I'll say, different. I never grew up thinking I would be, part of the Navy's elite bomb squad. Never thought that. Just decided that, my mom and dad were hardworking people. They helped instill in me, a work ethic, how to treat people. And so I thought service to the nation is a great thing to do. And I still think it is a great thing to do. And if the military would take old guys like myself, I'd go back in a heartbeat. So,
wow. Well, I know you. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
I'm married. I have 2 great sons who are great young men, and I have a wonderful wife. We've lived all over the world because of the Navy. We've lived Philippines, Sicily, Bahrain, all over the United States. Had the privilege to serve in the Office of the Secretary of Defense. It's just been a marvelous career. And, quite frankly, the greatest privilege I've ever had was to be able to lead our nation's young men and women in the field, in combat. And it was the greatest privilege of my life. And I'm very honored that I had that privilege to serve. So thank you, Lenora, for allowing me to serve our great nation. I appreciate it.
Well, I tell you, and I want to say that something over the last several years as we've become friends and colleagues is I've always been amazed at your humility, in all honesty. I've thought when I would learn more about your past and some of the things you've done and the people you've served and what you've accomplished, I've thought, wow, this man has a lot of humility. And the pride that you have for our military members, service members, and our veterans is something that has inspired me. It has also taught me. And I can't thank you enough because I had an appreciation for our veterans, but I think I didn't realize how ignorant I really was to how much our veterans have done for us, our service members do to help our lives be what they are, that we're so free to do things that we do because of the great men and women that are in our service and the things that are going on to help the world, sustain some level of freedom and things that we're trying to do. Well,
no one joins the military to get rich. They join the military to serve. They join the military. It's a brotherhood, sisterhood, type of thing. It's one of those things where, we serve because of the people around us. We don't serve because, we want to win awards and ribbons. We serve because we want to be a part of a team, something larger than ourselves. And I know when I joined up and got my commission, I became part of something that was larger than life. I have friends all over the world who I could pick up the phone today and reach out to them and say, hey, I'm really struggling right now. Can you help me out? And they would do it, no questions asked. And that's because of the bonds that we formed when we served together.
Well, I think that's something that I've seen too in that community is when you're in the service, like you said, the bond that's there, the recognition that we do things as a team, that even though each person is individually responsible to be excellent in whatever they're given to do and to be adapting or adaptive, whatever the right word is, that you also know that you rely on others. And that's a really nice balance that we need inside or outside the military, is that yes, we each have to be personally responsible, become excellent, but we also need each other.
When we were talking earlier, the hardest thing for me is to talk about myself, because after 30 plus years in the military, it's always been about the team. And as military members and their families transition out of the military, they have to learn to talk a little bit more about themselves as opposed to the team. But that's hard for us to do. And I was one of the things that I was dreading about on this podcast was talking about myself. I rather talk about the team and what veterans can do for the team and what teams are out there to support veterans as they transition.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for saying that and being willing to say that, because for me, the stories of individuals are also so important. But again, I'm always learning from you, even better understanding of that. So thank you for being willing to do it.
You're quite welcome. And like I said, it's a privilege to be able to have the title veteran. And, I did not know this, but veteran root is from a Latin term, vetus, meaning old. And I don't like to consider myself old, but I am a little bit older than a lot of people. And so a veteran, is a person who's had a long service or experience in a particular occupation or field. Mine just happens to be the military, right? And so a veteran, as we're getting close to Veterans Day, a veteran, is actually, there's a definition put together of a veteran, and it's part of Title 38 of our Code of Federal Regulations. It defines a veteran as any person who served in active military, naval, or air service who was discharged or released under conditions other than dishonorable. So pretty much anybody who has served and done a good job is a veteran. And so with Veterans Day coming up, I thought it was good to try to figure out what's the definition of a veteran. And so I think there's lots of people out there that you see, and you'd be like, oh, is that person a veteran? Well, yeah, there are veterans out there who are moms, dads, brothers, sisters, grandfathers, so there's just a lot of people out there that are veterans, and you wouldn't recognize it. And, with Veterans Day coming up, people need to know that every veteran identifies with their service to the nation a little bit differently. And I've had both positive and negative experiences talking to veterans, but I think for the most part, they've all been positive. And as Veterans Day is coming up, and I think every day should be Veterans Day, I think the proper, salutation or greeting should be, thank you for your service, and connect with that person who you're saying that to with your eyes and your ears, because they might come back and start telling you a little bit about their experience. And I think people have a greater understanding of what military service is or service to the nation is after speaking with a veteran.
Absolutely. And thank you. Perfect segue, and really already lead into the meaning of Veterans Day, because we talked about recording this at a time that it could come out the week of Veterans Day and potentially on the day. So can you say a little bit more about the meaning of Veterans Day? When I looked it up in the past, I noticed that there's not an apostrophe, like it's not a possessive.
Hey, great. Day. I had a true or false question for you lined up saying true or false. Veterans Day has an apostrophe on it.
And it does not.
You're right. Most people, though, think it does, right? But Veterans Day is for all veterans. So, Veterans Day goes back to World War I. I think, on the Treaty of Versailles in June of, I think it was 1919, that's when the treaty was signed. And that's when they say, the war was over. But actually, fighting actually stopped on the 11th day of the 11th hour of the 11th month. And that's why November 11th is a Veterans Day. And it was actually started, it was called Armistice Day. And in 1936, I think it was, or 1938, it became an official holiday, and it was set aside just for the veterans, to honor the veterans of World War I. And then, of course, we had World War II and the Korean War. So in 1954, Congress changed it from Armistice Day to Veterans Day, and now it commemorates or honors American veterans from all wars.
Yeah, and I love that. I appreciate learning a bit more of that history. The 11th day of the 11th month and the 11th hour, that's amazing. That's why it is November 11th. And I do know, tell me if there's more, but I believe Britain and Australia still honor Armistice Day, or?
I think in Britain they call it Remembrance Day.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I don't know what they call it in Australia, but Britain calls it Remembrance Day, and they do honor veterans also. Most countries have a Veterans Day. It falls on potentially different days depending on, their involvement in different wars. But most countries have a a way to honor their veterans or a day to honor their veterans.
Yeah, and I'm glad we do. Like you said, anytime you see a veteran, you'd recommend the kind of something simple enough to say is thank you for your service.
Yeah, I absolutely would. And I think, if you have time to continue the conversation, that's great. Today's day of COVID, you really can't shake their hand or anything like that, but maybe give them a bump of the elbow or something like that. But there's lots of ways, to honor veterans year round. Okay. And they're very simple things to do. One is you can volunteer at a veterans service organization, such as the USO, United Services Organization, or a local veterans organization. You could hang a flag in your yard. You could donate travel miles if you have some excess travel miles. And since this year a lot of us aren't traveling as much as we did, you could donate your travel points to the Fisher House or to Operation Heroes Miles, which will be used by the airlines to help fly military members and their families to go see their wounded or their injured, or get veterans to fly to see their family members. You could sponsor a service dog. There's lots of service dog organizations out there who need help. And I think for as little as $8,000, you could get a service dog trained. So that's something. You could support the honor flights or the honor flight network. And like you said, those are very special. And a lot of people might not know what they are, but basically it's an organization that takes veterans from World War II and others. They get them on a plane and they fly them to Washington, D.C. to visit the war memorials. And that's just a fantastic organization. And I know we've talked about that in the past, and it's just a great thing to do. And if you see a group of people coming through the airport and everybody's clapping for them, that's typically an honor flight who's arrived or who's leaving Washington, D.C. for that day.
That's great. I know it's very special because so many veterans have never been to that memorial. And it really, especially for those out of World War II, which there's fewer and fewer of our veterans still left here on the planet. And yet there's also those from the Korean War. But so many different generations or any of us, whether or not we talk about things or some of the difficult things that they experienced. And in a way, I've heard that it helps them have, besides being very well honored, it's also some closure, some connection to those very difficult things they faced for all of us.
Yeah, I think connecting with the memorials is a way for them to have closure. You're correct there. I think it's also allows them to go back in time and feel what they felt when they were in service to the nation. The other last thing I like to say on how you could support veterans, and I know we have done it a couple times at Expeditors, is there's a lot of veterans who have fallen into homelessness and stuff like that. So there's great events like the Seattle Stand Down for Veterans that helps veterans get off the streets and back into housing and other things. So those are great organizations to also support. And then it's getting close to Christmas time, and there are always men and women in uniform deployed around the world defending our freedom. So a care package is always great, or just a letter even.
Yeah.
It's always great to get mail when you're overseas.
Wow. I agree. There's so many different ways. And I know you volunteer with a number of organizations, and you've supported a number of groups that have gone out and volunteered. You lead the Veteran Opportunity Knocks for Veterans program at Expeditors, which is looking to hire veterans, of course, support veterans, and recognize service. So thank you again for that service and for those efforts, because your passion has spread in many places, and you've connected a lot of our own Expeditors veterans. Again, this is a separate podcast, but I can't help but honor the work. And whether it's Flags for the Fallen on Memorial Day, or all the different things that you've been a part of, building homes for veterans, I just appreciate it. But it's great for people to hear that you can do things as simple as write a letter. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I think, writing a letter is a great thing, helping out, volunteering some time. And I know it's hard now in COVID, but when, we're into the next phase and we're now getting, back out there in the world, there's lots of great organizations to volunteer at the national level, the state level, and the local level. And I think whatever your passion is in life, there's an organization out there supporting veterans to help them. There's
Boulder Crest Foundation. You introduced me to Ken Falk. They're fantastic.
That's a great organization that helps military members and veterans who are struggling with, the invisible wounds of war and are getting the help they need to grow and live their lives to the fullest capabilities. I know there's an organization that I like to support. That's the EOD Warrior Foundation, and it supports all the EOD warriors' families, provides scholarships for their kids to go to school. It does a whole lot of great things to support our men and women from the military's elite bomb squads. And so that's one that's near and dear to my heart. One locally here in the Houston area that I support is the Combined Arms Center. And this is a one-stop shop for military members transitioning, veterans, family members, and it's all under one roof. And you can get anything from help in finding a job to some fitness tips to help, getting your bills all arranged so you can pay them. So it's just a one-stop shop, which is great. And then if you're, I know you have a dog, Lenora, and the American Humane Society has, I think it's Pups for Patriots, which is a program that helps, develop service dogs. And then there's one that I've been involved in is Homes for Our Troops, which helps build specially designed homes for our wounded service members. And then one that is also near and dear to my heart and that Expeditors has supported over the years is the Gary Sinise Foundation that not only helps veterans, military members, but also helps first responders. It's a great organization, and they build homes, they help out. And I can't say enough great things about that organization.
Yeah, so if you're looking to help and support our great veterans, then there are so many organizations. I'll make sure that those you listed are in the podcast notes. And then if you're a veteran, heck, never be afraid to reach out. We do still need each other. Service has been so different for so many people. And we can need to say it over and over and over to anybody, veteran or really non-veteran. If you need help, reach out. We're humans. We need each other. It's not something to be ashamed of.
No, it's not. And you asked me what Veterans Day means to me is I try to connect every Veterans Day with as many of my friends who I serve with as possible. And every Wednesday, I try to reach out to an expediter who has served our nation just to chat with them to see how they're doing. But, they're one of the things I like to impart to everyone on this podcast is, there are veterans out there who may need some support. And if you know a veteran that needs support, here's the number they need to call. It's the Veterans Crisis Line, and it's 1-800-273-8255. Press 1, and there'll be someone on the line to help you with that veteran or to help that veteran through whatever challenge they're currently going through.
It's fantastic. And please, again, I'll make sure that phone number is in the notes. You can always just Google search the Veteran Crisis Line and use it. We have resources, and we are humans, and we need each other, and we can get through things, and life can get very good again. But it doesn't mean what we're facing isn't very difficult, but there are tools and great people out there. And I know, again, because I recently met or became familiar with the Boulder Crest Foundation, they're getting 2 to 3 times the results for helping people with PTSD or PTSI or whichever version it might be or whatever's going on. So reach out. And again, thank you, Ted. You gave us quite a list. That kind of leads me into something we were going to talk about, which is just some quick tips for transitioning veterans. I mean, it's such a change. It's a shift out. What are some tips for transition?
Wow, that's a great question. And transition is different for every military member in their family. But I will tell you, transition, the one thing that is probably common throughout, although every military member who transitions, is it's stressful. I mean, you have gone from a regimented life to the next day, maybe not knowing what you're going to do, No one's telling you to get up or anything else like that, right? So it's a stressful time. And I mean, you asked me to write a resume. I never wrote a resume in my life until, I sat through my transition assistance program, and they told me, oh, you gotta do it this way. You got to do it that way. And I've learned that resume writing is an art, and you have to write it for the job. And so those are different things that I've picked up.
And I want to mention that on Hiring Our Heroes, which was the podcast last week, they have some really nice tools on their website to help you with resumes or all kinds of pieces. But
I think Hiring Our Heroes is a wonderful organization. They have different programs, like you said, to help veterans as they transition out. They hold job fairs, and right now they're holding virtual job fairs.
Yep.
And typically they hold 3 types of job fairs. There's a job fair, there's a transition seminar, and they are wonderful events. The military members can go, their family members can go, and there's large corporations out there like Expeditors and others who are there, and they're looking to hire great veterans. And typically these hiring events come with some classes that the veterans can attend that give them some better skills as they go out there looking for jobs. And the one bit of advice I'll give to every person who's going through transition is, if you're not ready to start a job, don't look for a job, because looking for a job is a full-time contact sport. You got to get out there. And so if you're not ready to start work the next day, don't get out there and start looking for a job. Give yourself some time to decompress and figure out how to put a suit on, or how to not wear a uniform.
Yeah, it can take a lot of time to learn, huh?
Not
just learn, decompress.
Yeah, decompress. It just gives you some time to think about maybe what you want to do, because like I did not know what I wanted to do when I got out of the military, and there wasn't much calling for my military specialty of explosive ordnance disposal. Not everyone needs to hire someone who could take apart a bomb, but there's lots of military men and women who leave the service every day who can immediately take the skill sets that they've learned in the military based on their military specialty and find a job the next day. And I unfortunately wasn't one of those, but once again, I wasn't ready to start work the day after I retired. So I took a trip and went fishing with my dad, which was a great way to reconnect and decompress.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly important, taking time to shift, because it is a big deal. So many parts and pieces are changing. I want to say, from my side of things, for one, I've seen a lot more tools out there, a lot more things out there to help with the what do I want to do. And I think I want veterans to hear too that some of the same things you struggle with, that people transitioning careers or whatever are dealing with some of the same things. So I want you to not feel so different, that it's a lot of human transition stress. Although, yes, you have had such a certain group that you were connected with, that, and a certain identity and the way things were going. And sometimes the level of stress and how long the days were and the 24/7 focus that is very different outside. That is the bigger shift that I think there's no way that it couldn't affect you, even almost sometimes neurologically or chemically, if you're to that level of stress, if that's what your environment was like before you transitioned. And so that has got to be given respect and time and support to shift gears into a different lifestyle, different needs.
When I talk to people that are, in the process of transitioning out of the military, I tell them, find out what their passion is, get a hobby, because you're going to have some free time, and you might as well figure out what you enjoy doing, because most people who have hobbies like to do those hobbies, and therefore they continue to have structure in their lives so they can do those hobbies. So that will help maintain the structure that military members are used to. The other thing I'll tell them is, whatever physical fitness program that they're on, maintain it, because that will help keep your stress levels down as you search for opportunities that are out there.
Excellent. I know. And then you, again, your introduction to kinfolk and I read his book, Struggle Well. And they've got some really nice outlines in there as well on some of the things to do, because we all struggle. And if we're going to realize, hey, we all are going to struggle. Some have had to face many more difficult things than others, but we can have what they call post-traumatic growth, PTG. That's profound. And I can't thank you enough, Ted, because I'm still digging in and learning more, because I think it's such a fantastic set of work.
Ken is one of those great Americans who continues to give back, not only to his local community, but to every veteran and their families out there. So I can't say enough great things about Ken Falk. And, I was lucky to work with him when we both wore the cloth of our nation. And I'm lucky to be able to know him as a friend outside of the military. Him and his family are doing great things for our nation's heroes.
Well, I think this is a beautiful segue into the last thing we're really going to talk about. Is there is so much wonderful fit for business for our veterans when they are in that space, ready to work, wanting to work, and just figuring out what they want to do. Because we've talked about the teamwork mentality, the hard work mentality. And I have been so impressed by numerous veterans I've met that I think, oh my gosh, yes, I think there needs to be a better understanding of, rather than a singular look of the word veteran, that can mean so many different things for job skills. And that's why you said working to transition and create a resume, it's converting kind of a language from one sector to another. And it's a whole lot of work, but it's worth it. If you can say, how do I say what I did here in a business way? I had to do that from a total different industry, but those steps are critical. But the veteran fit for business, unpack that for us a little bit. What are some of the great things that make them so great for business?
Well, first of all, Lenora, you're absolutely right. It is difficult for men and women who have served our nation to translate their experience into words that are meaningful to someone who's looking to employ them, right? So I think, let me step back here, and I think the talent that a veteran will bring to an organization is immediate, right? First of all, and I've used the term we since I'm a veteran, we immediately know how to fit in to an organization, and we can effectively operate under pressure due to our time in the service. We understand the rigors of tight schedules and limited resources, right? So we've developed this capacity to know how to accomplish priorities on time in spite of the stress. And so we know the critical importance of staying on task until the mission is complete. We also, because of our experiences, I think we're a little bit more technology and technology savvy and globalized, right? We've served, we are usually aware of international and technical trends pertinent to business and industry. So we can bring maybe a global outlook to an organization or to the entire enterprise that enterprise might need to succeed. I think integrity, veterans know what it means to do an honest day's work. And so prospective employers can take advantage of that track record of integrity, and really that integrity translates into qualities of sincerity and trustworthiness that I know every employer out there is looking for someone who is trustworthy, right? So when you're looking for a trustworthy employee, you should think veteran. And then because veterans have worked in a dangerous environment, we're pretty conscious of health and safety standards, right? So we're aware of all those protocols to maintain the welfare of not only ourselves, but others. And then, of course, there's teamwork, and veterans really understand genuine teamwork grows out of the responsibility to one's colleagues. So military duties, we realize that we need to be part of a team or use teamwork to get the mission done. So we're all about the team. And then I think it helps with diversity and inclusion. Veterans have learned to work side by side with individuals regardless of race, gender, geographic origin, ethnic background, religious, or economic status. we've learned to work with everybody. So I think that brings a great diversity to your workforce. And then, of course, there's leadership. You know, every military person is trained in leadership from day one. And I think to be a good leader, you have to know how to follow. And I mean, you're taught that in the military. So I think those are some of the great things that veterans can bring to an organization on day one. And
That's
then
fantastic.
I think, you know, as a veteran gets more ingrained in whatever organization they have joined, they will have more impact as they learn more and more about the organization. I think, you know, for veterans, finding an organization that fits you is a little bit harder. So veterans need to do their research, you know, just do the research about the company. It's more than just what you're being paid. There's benefits. There's a corporate culture that, as a veteran, if you're looking for work, you need to do some research and see if that organization that you're targeting is really what you want. And then after you find that organization, you need to focus your resume and highlight your skills and experience that fit that company. And then it's always good to have a cover letter or something like that that you've customized that at least briefly showcase is how you can contribute to that organization in a specific way. Okay. It's not like a resume. It's, you know, it's that added boost. It's the resume has opened up the door and now you're kicking it in with this cover letter, because this cover letter is like, says, hey, Lenora Turner, this is what I did, and this is how I can help your organization be better. And then, of course, you want to make sure you, as a veteran, you have appropriate attire on for whatever organization you're going to interview with. Don't show up to an interview in t-shirts and flip-flops, unless, of course, it might be a surfing company or something like that. Then that might be the appropriate attire. And then, veterans, if you're looking for a job, a positive attitude and a smile and a firm handshake and an upbeat demeanor will put you ahead of any other job applicant out there.
That's fantastic, Ted. What a great list. And I know there's more and more resources out there, like Hiring Our Heroes does have a lot of lists and added to their website recently. I happen to know that one. I know there's others. So just search it there or elsewhere to get some help. But again, the job fairs he mentioned, it is a process. I don't know anyone who loves looking for a job. I even have earlier episodes, didn't mean to plug this, but even talk about a couple steps. But Ted said so many great things here of what to do. It's a step-by-step process. It is, take it on like a project.
It's scary. It can be scary. And, for me, it was very scary. And one of the things that a veteran needs to do, and I know they hear it all the time, but is get out there and meet people and network and make sure you're talking to every person that you can about that organization, and make sure that you treat, I'll say, the gatekeepers very well, because they can, put your resume to the top of the list. They, or they can pick up the phone and say, hey, Ted, although you didn't get this job, there's another one that's opened that I think you're a great fit for. You might want to apply. So there's, treat everyone as if they're going to be your next employer.
And thank you for bringing that up. I think people should take a little more advantage of something called informational interviews, where if you've done some research, you can reach out and say, can I schedule a time with you, whether it's a Zoom call or somehow in person, but you can say, can I kind of just talk to you about what you do or what your company does? I really am sorting through what I want and I'm very interested. But if you do that and let them know, I'll do all the research. There's nothing you have to do to prepare. I just want to ask you questions. And then make sure you're diligent to read through the website, because you don't want to ask them questions you could answer anyways just by reading a website. And then that in itself, if you're prepared, you do some reading and you just ask questions. It's okay to say, hey, I'm a little nervous about this, but I want to figure this stuff out. Would you have a call? That can turn into an opportunity. If you're prepared, you're showing yourself just who you are and those step-by-step process. But these are great tips, Ted. And I want people to know too, that it's fearful for anybody looking for a job. It's something nobody likes. It can be intimidating. Not everybody's intimidated by it, but most people are.
Oh,
so
no, it was definitely scary for me. I'm used to taking apart bombs in combat, and the most stressful thing for me was looking for a job, because I just didn't know. I didn't want to let my family down by not having a job. And
that's a statement, Ted. I want to say that again. You were taking apart bombs, sometimes underwater, in incredibly stressful situations, and it was more intimidating for you to make this incredible shift and to find a job, because it was going to be so different.
It was new. It was different. I wasn't trained, for that. And so it was a scary time. For the first time, I did not know, no one was telling me what to do, or, anything like that. So I think as a military person transitioning, we need to know that this is a hard time. And I would encourage every veteran to take advantage of all the different organizations out there that are willing to help you find your next employment opportunity, your next career, your next volunteer opportunity, whatever it might be.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you. Thank you so much, Ted. This covered some really great, valuable things. So I really appreciate this coming out this week. And we know we have plenty of things to do well in our country. And I love that we have our veterans as a part of all the ways we're solving problems, and being a part of the team together as we build all the things we need to do to have a continued strong, great country and part of the global network.
Well, one last thing I like to say, Lenora, is don't forget, hire a vet, and don't forget, thank a vet this Veterans Day, because without them, we would not have the freedom that we enjoy today in this marvelous country that we live in.
Thank you so much, Ted. Thank you for being a guest. Have a wonderful week. And again, thank you for your service.
All right. Well, thank you, Lenora. And please extend my thanks to your dad for his service.
I will. Thank you very much.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. I think it was loaded with great information, and the links to those organizations that were listed are in the podcast notes. So check that out. Please subscribe to this podcast. And right now, I have that special reading that my father did from something he wrote back in 1952. I hope you enjoy it. And Dad, thank you for your service.
Me and Joe Lazarosio took off in saber jets from Kimpo. While sailing along in the stratosphere, I said to Joe, now looky here. From what I see, we better dig, because off to the left, swift old MiG. Now we had lots of fuel and plenty of space for a real hot run and a red hot chase. So we dropped our tanks to really go throttle hot for a real good show. Up at the MiG, going fast, guns blazing hot as we drift past. Again that MiG, he started to climb, this time leaving us way behind. But coming from the rear and coming up fast was a low-slung job that went on past, and we looked at the MiG and he stared back, knew right then into the scrap for going at him like a son of a gun was a second lieutenant in a hopped-up P-51.
Happy Veterans Day.